Okay, since I didn't get much on my last video, I'm looking for answers on this. So I'm going to share another video. This is called Zionism Must Be Dismantled and Destroyed. And you can see it on the screen, and it's the complete shows, and it's stewpeters.local.com. This is a Rumble video that I'm going to play. And I'm going to skip through the advertisement stuff and whatever. I don't make any money on. I don't get enough views. I'm censored a great deal, and it's late. It's the 20th of September 2024, and it's like 2:30 in the morning. I'm having one of those sleepless nights where I'm delving deep into reading things and watching videos. So without further ado, I'm going to take myself off the screen. I'm going to stop this at 20 minutes and continue it at 32 minutes. And then I'm going to stop it at 58 minutes. I'm going to play it at a little faster speed. You should be able to hear what they say, and just listen, and please comment and let me know. I want other people's opinions on this, because I'm really searching and trying to find the answer. Okay, so I'm going to hit the play button. I'm going to enlarge the screen.
We have a big problem, and this is going to continue ongoing. This is an outrage to America. You talked about law. This is a travesty to law. There is no law, because the information and money are completely controlled by a small group of people. And if you say their name, you're called an anti-Semite.
Go. I just don't understand how you have a country where your politicians have more allegiance to a foreign nation than they do their own. I honestly think that we have literal treason going on right now, where Israel's interests are being put before America's interests.
Is America a sovereign nation, or are we being controlled by Israel?
People are always talking about they are out of control, they are killing us. We have to identify who the real enemy is.
The satanic Jews. They control everything and mostly everybody.
What difference does it make if it's a baby or if it's an adult? It's the same thing.
There's one little nation state of Israel that everybody's afraid to talk about. It'll get you nuked off the internet. It'll scare advertisers away from doing business with you if you talk about Zionist infiltration.
Are you a Zionist?
Yes.
You have to get rid of AIPAC. You have to get rid of, the Israeli control over our country. I mean, there's just because they clearly don't give a shit about it.
Are you part of the Jewish conspiracy? What exactly is the...
Maybe. I'm Jewish.
Those are the words that he told us that he would never use again.
That film coming exclusively to the Stu Peters Network this fall. If you want early access to that film, just head on over to stewpeters.com. If you click on the subscribe link that you'll see there at the top, you become the most important part of the information army that is rising up to defend our country and our children from the perversions and the pedophilia and the pornographic materials that are being shoved in their faces every day. You can subscribe monthly to the network for just $9, annually for just $90, less than 27 cents a day. But if you're a billionaire, you can give a little bit more here. If you click on the Give Once icon, you can put $1 million in there if you'd like to. It sure is a whole lot more effective than donating to so-called political candidates or PACs and political operatives. We are fighting a war for the soul of our nation and for the souls of our children. And getting the truth out on a broad scale is the most important thing that we can do. Having difficult and uncomfortable and controversial conversations, which I don't know why it should be controversial if we're just telling the truth. And the truth is that for more than a century, but especially since 1948 and the founding of this modern-day secular nation state called Israel, the Jewish supremacist ideology of Zionism has been a scourge on the planet, especially on Western, especially on Christian civilization. Fueled by this all-consuming desire for control and subjugation of others, Jewish Zionists and their useful Shabbos goys have amassed extraordinary amounts of power and influence over our institutions and over our corporations and over our banks and over the media and our government at large. They have managed to seize control of the flow of information and of the ideas that are taught to students at school. They force the rest of the world to embrace a Jewish religious ideology that says that Jews are the only people on earth with a right to self-determination, meaning they're the only people on earth who get to make decisions and govern themselves, and that it's up to the rest of us to facilitate them in doing that, on a piece of land that they claim belonged to their ancestors 2,000 years ago. But the inconvenient truth about all of that is that these people came out of Eastern Europe just 80 years ago. But you see, vast networks of Zionist enforcers keep all of this in line. Groups like AIPAC in the United States take ownership of politicians, bribing them and compromising them, making sure that they'll do everything in their power and more to promote Jewish Zionist interests, even to their detriment, even to the demise of their own people. And America is certainly not alone in all of this. Our friends in England have been dealing with Zionism for just as long, if not longer, than we have. It was the British who handed that Palestinian mandate over to a bunch of Jewish terrorists to pave the way for the birth of Israel and of the genocide of Palestinians with American support, of course. In England, Zionist merchants of civilizational destruction have influenced policy, just like here in America, and they have engineered this ongoing ethno-religious clash between native British Christians and Islamic migrants from the Middle East who've been displaced by Zionist wars. And of course, they're waging an all-out war against free speech. They actually have a pressure group called the British Israel Communications and Research Center, or BICOM for short, whose entire purpose is pushing Zionist pro-Israel propaganda in the press and into the information stream, and then attacking anyone who doesn't go along with it. And it should be no surprise to anyone, of course, that BICOM is closely linked to members of Britain and Israel's governments. So, of course, people who stand up to any of this are targeted, just like here in America. And one of those people is David Miller. David Miller was a political sociology professor at the University of Bristol in the UK. He was fired for disagreeing with Zionism and for having the balls to actually practice free speech against Jewish wishes. But you see, that firing, it turned out to be a big mistake. Because David, unlike so many others, fought back. And then he won. He stood up to the Zionists and to their enforcers, and he received a landmark ruling protecting free speech. A BBC report on the subject from February of this year says, quote, an academic experienced discrimination when he was sacked from his university for comments that he made about Israel, a tribunal has ruled. Professor David Miller was found to have been wrongfully dismissed by the University of Bristol in October 2021. The tribunal heard how a complaint against Professor Miller, who was employed as a professor of political sociology, was first received in 2019 after a lecture at the university where he said the Zionist movement was one of the pillars driving Islamophobia in the UK. The university subsequently received a complaint from the Community Security Trust charity, which said that his lecture was, quote, false, vile, and anti-Semitic. Further complaints were made to the university after he took part in the event called Building the Campaign for Free Speech in February of 2021, in which he spoke of being publicly criticized for his views on Palestine and Israel. This subsequently led to disciplinary proceedings, and he was dismissed from his role on 1 October 2021 after a hearing found he did meet the standards of behavior expected of university staff, end quote. But again, the university was found to have been in the wrong by acting as Zionist enforcers and pushing David out of his job for telling the truth. That was a win. A big win, an historic win. According to the law firm that represented David's case marked the, quote, first time ever that anti-Zionist beliefs are protected in the workplace, end quote. But of course, the Zionists were far from thrilled with this ruling. And in typical Zio fashion, the university's Union of Jewish Students released a public statement declaring themselves victims, calling for free speech to be muzzled. The Jewish students said that the ruling would, quote, set a dangerous precedent about what can be lawfully said on campus about Jewish students and the societies at the center of their social life. This will ultimately make Jewish students less safe, end quote. So what are they so afraid of exactly? The answer is they're afraid of losing their grip. They're afraid of losing control over the discourse and over the control of beliefs and over the control of geopolitical views of millions of people who they have managed to corral into a corner and tell what to do. David has said the Zionist strategy is to colonize British public life, much like they've done here in America. And the only way to combat that is to dismantle Zionism, both in Palestine and in the West. For more on this, we're now joined by David Miller himself. We appreciate you making the time to come on with us. What are they, in your opinion, so afraid of? Do you think it's that they're afraid of losing this power, this grip over all of Western civilization?
Yes, look, I think that the difficulty that the Zionists face is that they have been born into and grown up in a really strong climate of indoctrination, where they are told that Jews are chosen, that they have a right to, a birthright indeed, to the land of Palestine, and that nobody can make them remove themselves from there. And so what they're threatened by is the idea that actually what they have is an ideology which nobody in the world really agrees with, and that if that ideology is targeted, is discussed properly, is researched, and is dismantled, that they will have no place in the world to pursue the power of Zionism. And that's what worries them. The students at my university were in an organization called the Union of Jewish Students, which of course is a Zionist organization signed up directly to the World Zionist Organization. And they wanted me gone because I was insisting on saying that Zionism is an existing movement in the world which is fundamentally racist and genocidal and which must be dismantled. But they couldn't handle that. That made them feel unsafe. So that was what their problem was, and that's what we've seen ever since. So when I was dismissed, they all said this was fantastic, I'd been dismissed, and then they threw their hands up in horror when the courts found that I had been wrongfully dismissed, and I'd been dismissed because I was an anti-Zionist. And indeed, the court found that anti-Zionist views were worthy of respect in a democratic society, i.e., not in the least bit racist.
Do you agree? Zionism is a bigger threat. I mean, it's just as equally, if not more, of a threat from Christian Zionists as it is Jewish Zionists.
Look, there are more Christian Zionists in the world than there are Jewish Zionists. That's true. It's also true that Christian Zionism originated the doctrine, as Pappy's recent book has shown. But it's perfectly plain that the vast majority of those who are active in bullying, intimidation, infiltration of Western societies are Jewish Zionists. The power of the Christian Zionists, with the possible small exception of the US where they have more power, is really negligible. So this is a question of a movement which is predominantly Jewish. Yes, of course, there are some Christians, especially in the US, but they don't partake in. If you ask me to name the people at the top of AIPAC, I could tell you who the Jewish ones were, but I couldn't tell you who the Christian ones were because there really aren't any. So yes, of course, there's a distinction there, and that movement which they've built is a Jewish movement, of course, and it has some support from Christian Zionists. And of course, if you look at the background of the ideology and the ideas of Christian Zionism and Jewish Zionism, they're actually quite opposed to each other, as I'm sure you're aware. They both think that come the glorious day that one will vanquish the other. But no, the Zionist movement is mainly staffed and funded by Jewish Zionists.
I mean, I agree that there's this huge control structure, and it's an unpopular conversation and an unpopular fact, an inconvenient truth that we report on here daily, that when you look behind the curtain in the cabinet, in the administration, in the State Department, unelected bureaucrats, people at the top of the education system, these are all people who claim to be Jews. Alejandro Mayorkas, the people who control the banks, Janet Yellen, the people who decide when we go to war, how many people to drop bombs on, whether we're going to do it indiscriminately or not, seemingly what's happening as Israel is trying to annex all of this land and take it back to them because they say that it belongs to them. But I'm confused about the label of anti-Semitism that people on X and the Rolling Stone and the New York Times and the Daily Beast and Right Wing Watch accuse me of, because the people that we are questioning and the group that we are criticizing are not even Semitic. They're not Semites. The people who we are defending and giving a platform to, and the people who we're just pointing out, these women and children are not part of a terrorist organization called Hamas. They're not part of this boogeyman, Mossad, CIA, Israel-funded group of people that allegedly attacked them on the 7th of October. A lot of that attack, by the way, that was early on reported has been debunked, including the mass rapes. And those are the Semitic people. Those are Semites. So how has the public consciousness been able to be shifted to such an inverted position on this whole definition of anti-Semitism?
Well, I mean, the term anti-Semitism was dreamt up by a Jewish scholar, but it's more widely known that it was popularized by someone who was a sort of proto-Nazi in the late 19th century. Now, he had a belief that the Semites were a race which was inferior, and the Semites for him were those who spoke Hebrew, those who spoke Aramaic, those who spoke Arabic, the Semitic languages. So he was enunciating a belief that people from that region of the world, from West Asia, from the Middle East, were inferior to Aryans. Now, the Zionists quite liked the term anti-Semitism because it implied that Eastern European Ashkenazi Jews were from the Middle East, which of course, as we know from genetic studies done by Israeli social scientists, we know is false, that they mainly came Ashkenazi from Eastern Europe and the Caucasus. So the Zionists liked the term because it suggested that they were from the Middle East, and it helped them with their campaign to convince the British or the Americans, or indeed the fascists in Italy, that they should have Palestine as their alleged homeland. So of course that was part of the campaign, and of course that's today they still use the label, but they have of course tried to subtly change the label. I don't know if you noticed this, but when you see Zionists talk about anti-Semitism, they don't say anti-Semitism with capital S. They've taken away the hyphen, they've taken away the capital S, because they want to distance it from the idea that it has anything to do with the Semitic people, which of course includes Arabs, Palestinians, and the people of the Levant.
How do they get this control over all of these governments? I mean, specifically speaking here in the United States, how did they accomplish the goal of occupation?
Well, look, the history of this, and we don't really have great history books on this process, but the history of this is that we know that Jews are economically massively advantaged in the US, in the UK, across the whole of the West.
Yeah, less than 2% of the population represents 40% of the billionaires. And unfortunately, I only have 2 minutes left, so I know that's not a lot of time to explain this, but please go ahead.
That's right. Of course, that's true. It's 0.5% of the population in the UK. So yeah, this is a massive overrepresentation. And you add to that economic privilege. You have the Zionist movement comes along, it creates the state of Israel, it decides it's going to continue with the Zionist movement after 1948, and it tells its members that you must find a way to influence the countries in which you live, to raise funds for the Zionist movement, and to continue the Zionist project. That's the model. That's the instructions that they had to infiltrate political society and move it in a Zionist direction. That seems to me perfectly able to explain the kind of political control and penetration which we have today.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. And with the Zionist control, I guess, if you will, if we're going to use this terminology, I mean, the media is Zionist controlled, correct? You would agree with that?
Well, I think penetrated is a better word. Infiltrated and penetrated. So the police in the UK are infiltrated by Zionist assumptions. The media are infiltrated by Zionist assumptions. They're not totally controlled by Jewish Zionists, although in the US that's more the case than it is in the UK.
Yeah, Fox News Channel, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, all the major networks, all the cable broadcast networks, a lot of these so-called alternative media networks. Take the Daily Wire, for example. And so then they're able to prop up these candidates, and the only way that they get any spotlight in the media at all is if they subscribe to this Zionist ideology, and if they don't, the media will give them no airtime, almost as if they don't exist at all. And that's why you're deciding in our country, pretending here for a second that voting even counts, you're deciding which one are you going to vote for, the red Zionist or the blue Zionist. David Miller, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. I wish I had more time with David. We will have him back on. Very eloquent speaker, very well educated, and we're extremely satisfied with the victory that he was able to achieve. More on the Stu Peters Show continues next. I really mean that. I mean, talking to a guy like David Miller, it's like opening an encyclopedia. 19 minutes and 25 seconds just absolutely flies by. in such a way that just completely
are the words that he told us that he would never use again.
And if you head over to stewpeters.com right now, this is what you'll see. There's a big red subscribe button at the top. This will take you to a page where for $9 a month, you can be the most important part of our army. To keep us independent, to keep us away from being reliant on sponsors, we are in the category of the unbought and the unbuyable. $90 for the year, so you get 2 months free if you pay up front, or monthly, just $9. If you're a billionaire and you have $1 million just burning a hole in your pocket, go to the give once option. I mean, it sure is a whole lot better than funding some of these fake political candidates. What are you going to do? Go give $1 million to a PAC that's going to usher in the next gubernatorial candidate to destroy your home state? We say it on this show all the time. And it's really not a secret to any of you or to anyone at all that this country is under a full-scale invasion, the likes of which no nation on earth has ever seen before. There are so many millions of illegals pouring over our southern border, so many millions of fake refugees and fake asylum seekers being brought in by our own government and planted in the middle of American communities. So much so that the term invasion has come into regular use. The average guy on the street knows that America's under an invasion, and it's not shocking to anyone to hear the word used. Because that's exactly what's happening. We're being invaded. And we have been for a very long time. And for many people, this invasion has been accepted as a part of just everyday life. It's supported by the government. It's supported by the banks. It's supported by big corporations and by the entertainment industry and by rappers and by actors and by NFL football players. And it's supported by fake religious institutions like the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, like Jewish-run Catholic charities. And these groups, these glorified human trafficking syndicates, because that's what they are, that hide behind religious values and virtues as they ferry invaders all over the United States of America, and as they sell vulnerable children off to perverts, these are the people who, along with the federal government, the murderous government, corporate, private crime syndicate, drop thousands of Haitians off in places like Springfield, Ohio, so they can eat cats and dogs and give birth to children who will be registered as natural-born U.S. citizens and spend their entire lives draining the welfare system and selling their mail-in ballots to political operatives. These are the people who take thousands of communist Chinese sleeper soldiers who've been escorted from the Darien Gap to the southern border and then drop them off right in America's heartland. They target communities that they say are too white, too Christian, that they say don't have enough diversity. They take kids from all over the world, but especially destitute and unaccompanied kids from Latin America, and they work with cartels and human traffickers and some of the nastiest, most disgusting people on the planet to sex traffic them and labor traffic them. And they do it to adults as well. All of this is happening right in front of our faces, and the public is starting to find out some very disturbing details about just how widespread this really is. And that's thanks to a handful of courageous whistleblowers and journalists who are on a mission to bring the truth to the American people and bring these crimes against humanity to light. These journalists are asking questions. They're demanding answers. They're conducting their own investigations, oftentimes under an extreme risk of bodily harm or even death. One of these journalists is Hernando Arce. You've probably seen him around because Hernando is a citizen journalist who's been documenting firsthand the collapse of America's southern border, the trafficking of human cargo, of sex slaves and manual labor slaves all over the United States. And Hernando has done such a deep dive that he's come across so much information that's harmful to the open borders criminals driving this country into the ground that now his life is in danger. Hernando says that recently, as he reported from the ground near the southern border, NGO employees tried to blow up his car because he was investigating them and their employers. The non-governmental organizations, as they're called, groups like Catholic Charities and the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, who are getting paid by the federal government to traffic illegal aliens. Hernando was flying too close to the sun. He was getting a little too close to the truth. So they tried to kill him. But you shouldn't be surprised by any of this, of course, because these people have demonstrated over and over again that they have absolutely no regard for human life. These people are selling children. They're pumping American communities full of cat and dog eaters and drug-dealing, child-raping, third-world savages, and they're getting paid by the government to do it. So of course they wouldn't bat an eye if they killed a journalist or anyone else who gets in their way, because they're criminals. But they're being exposed thanks to people like Hernando, who's working on an upcoming documentary called Treason that will show how the United States government has become the middleman in this multi-billion-dollar trafficking scheme that includes state and local officials, includes NGOs, includes multinational criminal gangs, turning Texas into the mecca of child trafficking. For more on this, we're now joined by Hernando Arce. You've been doing a fantastic job covering all of this. I'm really looking forward to your upcoming documentary, Treason. They tried to kill you, Hernando.
Well, first, Stu, it's a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, I've been covering this here immigration crisis for the last 10 years, ever since I lived in New York City, and my town of Jackson Heights, Queens, has turned into a third world country, Stu.
Yeah, and the entire country is turning into a third world country. What is the goal of these people at the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society and these people at fake Jewish-run charities like Catholic Charities?
But that's one of the NGOs, non-government organizations. There's also Jewish Family Services, and so they are co-conspirators, in my opinion, in this here destruction and invasion of our country. So,
and they're not going to stop. And they have a motive. And what is the motive?
well, the first motive is money. It's a grip. These NGOs across the nation, and really, it goes down to Catholic charities, Lutheran Church, Baptist Church, Presbyterian Church, Methodist Church. To be frank, the Homeland Security has a budget of $7 to $9 billion a year for the last 4 years for these NGOs to transport, feed, clothe, and yes, human and child sex trafficking, transnational, all over the world.
Where are all these missing kids going?
Well, as of today, approximately 435,000 children have come into the border without any guardian, without any parents. Most of them are used by the Mexican cartel, and they put a little badge with their sponsors. 90% of the sponsors are illegal aliens. So these children, as young as 3 months old, are come through a port of entry or non-port of entry, and they're handed off to ICE. ICE hands them off to Health and Human Services, where they process in influx centers. There are over 300 camps all across America where these NGOs operate, and they're basically hostages. These children, they can't even go back to their home country. The demographics is most of them are 13 to 17-year-old boys and girls, and they're separated by sex. By the way, there's only two genders, and they're separated by sex and by age, Peter.
So there's been a lot of talk about cats and dogs and Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. And this is being kind of debunked, I guess you would say, by the media, by the legacy media. Do you know about this? Is this actually happening? Are these people actually eating dogs and cats?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, listen, I'm not here to gaslight my followers, and that's why I have some great followers on X and on Rumble. I came here not knowing what I was going to expect, but I'm chasing the money. I'm chasing the story. I think it's an insult to me and many people like Ryan Mata and JJ Carroll, the producers of this film. This is treason.com, because we're worried about pets. Now, I love my pets. We all love our pets, cats, dogs, birds, whatever. And it's allegedly that some of these people have eaten them. But that's not what we should be concerned about. We should be concerned about the 435,000 missing children that come into our border. Granted, they're not American children, but these children are all innocent. I don't care if they come from South America, South Africa, or Europe. We should be focused on that. And so I find it a little insulting that both parties are taking it into this non-story, in my opinion. Stupid.
It is a non-story. I see what you're saying. And yes, the kids are definitely more important, but we're talking about a group of people. Okay, and then we're also talking about an incoming famine. J.D. Sharp was on the program yesterday and said, hey, they have no other choice at this point but to kill Trump and to do it very publicly. And then usher in Kamala Harris, who obviously is going to create food shortages. We're going to have an imminent famine that's going to happen. And if these people are going to eat dogs and cats, they'll obviously eat the children that we're speaking of that we care so much about in the first place. They shouldn't be here. Alejandro Mayorkas, a Jewish man, is perpetuating all of this. He is responsible for intentionally creating this invasion. And then these NGOs that you're speaking of and these so-called charities that we're speaking of here, they're helping to facilitate it, and they're getting paid. And then there's also, besides what's being paid for in the open, there's a lot of black market money that's happening here too, isn't there?
Black market in what sense? In terms of the grift that I see here?
Yeah.
With the mayor and the governor? Yes. The governor of Ohio, it's my first time here to Ohio. He has close ties to the Clinton Foundation and Billy Clinton, the brother of Bill Clinton. And they've been operating in Haiti for over 15 years. They were supposed to build churches and hospitals. They never did that. They took the millions and hundreds of millions of dollars and have disappeared with it. Now, full circle, we understand that the mayor of this city, Mr. Robert Rue, and the governor, Mr. DeWin, both own over 25 properties each in their portfolio here in a small town of Springfield, which is a population of 50,000 people. And so a lot of them were purchased in the last 5 years, last 2 years, foreclosures. They bought them in foreclosures, so they're getting sweet deals. And so I'm going to go to the city hall after this interview here with you, Steve. I'm going to go and demand answers at the city hall, which is a mile away, to find out if this mayor and the governor are leasing out these Haitians, these rentals for 400 to 300% higher than the fair market rent, Stu.
I had information that there were dozens of properties that were sold for millions of dollars that are actually only valued at less than $100,000. What the hell's going on with that?
Okay, well, let me explain that, please. I have a background in real estate. I've been doing real estate for 27 years. It's very common when you buy a real estate portfolio in bulk, meaning you're buying more than one property, that when you purchase that at the closing table with the title company and the recording offices with these counties, they record all 25 sales under one sale price or one mortgage amount. In that case, here for the governor, it was $1.6 million for 25 properties. So if you average it out, it comes out to $65,000 per property, which is probably more or less the fair market value for these distressed properties in distressed conditions here.
So they're making money at every angle here. And then they're getting reimbursed by the government or subsidized by the federal government in order to provide this housing that they're actually essentially stealing and then increasing, illegally, inflating the value of the properties.
Yeah, they created their own market going back 15 years with the Haitian. Haiti is a failed state. All right, we know that. Like Somalia, these are failed states. No thanks to the CIA, in my opinion. But understand the way the process works. That a lot of these Haitians are not coming directly from Haiti. They've been already living in certain parts of South America for years: Peru, Chile, Colombia, and that's why they speak Spanish. Half of them I explained to you speak Spanish. Half of them speak Creole because they've been living in other countries. So you're telling me they live in other countries, making money, having a family. They find out the border is open with the Biden-Harris regime. They apply online, and then they apply for temporary protective status. They fly in directly into Ohio or any other major city in the country, and they have a 2-year temporary, but it's not temporary. Nothing's ever temporary with this administration. They're here to stay, as long as they don't create any felonies, right? So, and then they apply for Obamacare. and they're eligible for Obamacare. They get work permits at the border when they're processed. ICE has to have them sign a disclosure saying we're taking a photograph for the American replacement. If you're going to replace the Americans, and they take a picture, they get an ID, federal ID, which they can use possibly for elections.
Hold on a second. Did you say that they're expressly told that they are going to be replacing Americans?
No, but that's what's happening.
Okay, so they're not told that.
Well, listen, Stu, the United Nations, which I have in my car, I didn't bring it with me. I did a printout. The United Nations has a program since 2001. It's called the Replacement of Migration Compact. That's why we're in this mess, by the way, because we signed into this refugee asylum campaign. Trump got us out of it. That's why we had the lowest amount of illegals coming into our country. Obama got us into it. Trump took us out of it. And then Biden puts us back into this compact of global migration. That is the main mothership that's creating this havoc all over the world. But yes, the United Nations does have a program called the Replacement of Migration. It's online. I'm
just watching some of the footage that you have taken here. When you're talking to these people, what are they telling you?
The illegals?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I interviewed them at the American Replacement Center, which I so fondly coined it in San Antonio, Texas. That's where I do most of my coverage. That's 2 hours from the border. San Antonio is a stopover. You're watching right there. 30% of these Haitian women are coming into our country pregnant, and they're 8-9 months pregnant. They're about to pop. That's a phenomenon, I think. So these are all the low-income migrants. These are not Chinese. These are not Arabs. These are not Middle Eastern. These are all low-income from Venezuela, from Cuba, from Haiti, and South and Central America, too. And they come here for a better life. But 95% of them did not come through CBP1 program, which is unconstitutional app. We didn't approve that. I didn't vote for a CBP1 app program. 95% come through the river and the unfinished wall. And they come in here, yes, maybe for a better life, but we have a welfare state that's $1 trillion a year. And they are going to overwhelm the system through the cloud picking strategy. And yes, they are getting Obamacare, and the NGOs are taking their data. These NGOs are sharing. My hypothesis, my theory is we have millions of illegals here. They have the NGOs with their spreadsheets. They're going to be sharing these spreadsheets with these Marxist organizations like True to Vote, like Jolt to Vote, like Rock to Vote, Voter Participation Center. These are all Marxist organizations. They're going to take that information and they're going to channel it into voter registration. And then they're going to go harvest the registration door to door with these George Soros organizations. These illegals are not going to go to the precincts and vote physically. No, that's the last thing they have on their mind. But working with these Marxist organizations and the NGOs, these co-conspirators, that's how I believe they're going to try to rig the election with these illegals. Information. Stu.
You're doing a fantastic job. When does the film come out?
Well, the film came out. It's out already. It was out last week. And it's a 2-part series. The first part is called #Trafficked, where we focus on the children that have come in and are being murdered and killed in back warehouses and for the organ harvesting. It happens every day in Mexico, and it's happening in America, all over the world. And also, so that's the first part. The second part comes out end of October, and that one is called #Invaded, regarding the whole global invasion. You can see that thististreason.com. And if you put my promo code, my last name, RC1515, you get 15% off, Stu.
Yeah, of course. Give me that website one more time.
Thististreason.com.
I'm going to pull it up here because I want everybody to be able to see it. Thististreason.com. This is where you can buy the film. You can get access to documents, VIP access. There is a call to action here. You can donate. Not only is the federal government not helping us to get out of this mess, but they are actually intentionally putting us into this mess. There's nobody that's riding in on a white horse that's going to save us other than Jesus Christ himself, which means that we have to pick up the figurative sword and fight as commanded by God. And only can we do that if we support one another, if we come together, if we get all of the information that's readily available. It's there. Don't turn your head to this stuff. I know that it's uncomfortable to acknowledge what's happening in our country. You agree with that, Hernando? So many people are just willfully ignorant. They don't want to hear it. They turn their back to it. They don't want to know that this is going on.
Yes, unfortunately, many Americans have fallen asleep, are in a somber sleep. But I'm just a regular guy with an iPhone 13, and I report because I know the left is going to try to rewrite history, like they always try to rewrite history. And all my videos are backed up in the clouds and in hard drives, so that's all my videos that I've been doing are never going to be stolen or lost. And so we do this for God and country, like I in my videos. This is a campaign that I'm working on, a mission that I have from God. I am his soldier in Christ to save our country, to save our nation.
Go to the website. Thististreason.com. Hernando RC, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. Take a look at that. I mean, there it is. Hernando RC picking up the iPhone 13 and doing a tremendous job to bring the information to you. Again, the website is thististreason.com. Some of the stuff that he's documenting here is just absolutely, I mean, it's so sickening. This is a physical invasion of our country. This is treason. Go to thisistreason.com. There it is again, thisistreason.com. Hernando RC, thank you. God bless you.
My pleasure.
More of the Stu Peters Show continues next. Good over.
There's a whole bunch of stories that have to be dug into, rethought, reconsidered, and in some cases completely discarded.
As modern Americans, we've been spoon-fed this dumbed-down, cartoonish, simplified version of history. It's all fake. It's all bullshit. Everything that we have been taught is part of a self-serving narrative written by the people who will say and do anything to keep us on a leash. Now, this version of history, some big-name corrupt families like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and their many associates are credited over and over and over again with propelling human development. Throughout the late 18 and early 1900s, almost every major American city was burnt to the ground. What if we really are quite literally living atop the ashes of an advanced civilization that's been hidden from us for our entire lives? So the 2024 election is on our doorstep. And of course, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are knocking on your door, pushing for higher taxes, even taxes on unrealized gains. Can you imagine that? Paying taxes on something that you never took profits on?
Forgot to unmute myself. Hey, Third, and Ghost, thanks for coming in. Yeah, listen, this Jewish thing has been driving me crazy, and also just at the end there, that stuff with the yeah, I'm hanging in there, Third. That stuff with the ancient civilization, and when I started looking at that stuff, and I just asked myself the simple question: could someone from the 12th century with a hammer, chisel, boards, and a donkey turning a wheel with ropes and ladders build those cathedrals and buildings that they built in the 12th to 15th century? Something's wrong. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know, and I've been around a lot of Jewish people, and so I've had good experience with Jewish people, mostly bad experience. They don't like people that are not Jewish around them so much. Like when I went to high school, I had a friend, David Zisk, and we hung out a lot together. We get a walk by his house one night. He had to go home for something. We were just teenagers walking around at night. I don't remember where we were playing basketball or whatever we were doing at the athletic club. Anyway, we went by his house to get something. And he's like, "Oh, Tony, you got to wait outside. You're not Jewish. And my mom doesn't want me hanging around with guys that ain't Jewish. I got to stay outside." Then another time, he said, "Oh, you can come in, Tony. Just, I stand in the foyer. But if my mom asks you, tell her you're Jewish." I'm like, "Dude, my name's Tony. I'm going to tell your mom I'm Jewish." Like, that's ridiculous. And another time I drove a Jewish girl home from school. She's like, "God dropped me off a block away," and then I'm not going to tell you because I go into a big story about what else happened. But I wasn't allowed on field trips. I got accused of everything. I got stolen in the school. I wasn't allowed to have the grades that I earned, and I wasn't allowed to play sports. And I wasn't allowed to graduate, even though I had passing grades. They actually had a meeting, graduate high school, had a meeting to stop me from graduating. So they had two teachers not give me a grade. And they picked two classes. The two teachers that gave into that were where I had AB average. So which was auto mechanics class, which I had straight A's in. And the other one was gym, which I had A's and B's in. So I never got a graduation. And they announced it to me, my history teacher, in my senior year, 2 weeks before graduation, in front of the whole class, like to embarrass me. And I never did. I didn't get in fights. I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, I was a little bit. I came from a city before that in Patterson, so I was a little tougher. That was Fair Lawn, New Jersey. But so there I was mistreated. They threw my brother Mike out in 10th grade, my sister Ro out in 8th grade, and my brother Angelo out in 7th grade, out of school, out of the school system. So they do not like people who come into their area who are not Jewish. Now, there were a lot of people that were there from St. Anne's School that, went to the high school. They didn't bother those kids because they belonged to that church, and they didn't want, I guess, have the conflict. So when you came in from the outside, and especially I came from Patterson, which is a very rough town in New Jersey, it's comparable to Newark or Jersey City or Trenton. Like, there's a lot of crime and stuff in those towns. So, but I came, I'll put it this way. If I was a Jewish kid that came from Patterson, they would have treated me like gold. But because I was non-Jewish, they treated my whole family like crap and kicked us all out of school. And my IQ is like a 135 when I was younger. So, so I was able to get passing grades, although you know, even if I had an A average, I remember, you know, and I asked the teacher, why do I got a C? He says, Tony, I can't give you an A. You know, you can't play track. I went out for the track team, and I ran 3 events, and the track coach loved me. You know, I ran 100-yard dash. I was like 14, 15. Ran a 100-yard dash in like 12 seconds flat. I ran the 220 in like 24, 25 seconds. I did the long jump. I jumped like 17 feet, you know, in the long jump. And I was a short little guy, but I ran so damn fast and I jumped off the board. I just flew through the air. And I played a lot of basketball too. So I know how to like stay up in the air a fraction of a second longer. But when you're running at full speed, you can go a little bit further, you know. But anyway, that's beside the point. Halfway through the season, the principal came because I was like the star of the team. He's like, I saw you smoking behind the library and you ran away from me. You're off the team. And that was it. I was off the track team. But the coach didn't want to let me go. So they took 4 guys that didn't go out for track and they had them replace me. That's my high school experience. It was horrible. In fact, we're having our 50th year anniversary reunion. I get to notice because I'm still on the list because they did it like right before graduation. You know, they said I couldn't graduate. The principal, Mr. Miller, may rot in hell, and a few other people in there. You know, it was kind of rough. It was hard. And my high school years were horrible because of that. But then it's kind of even funnier. In my later years, I opened a car dealership after all the corruption thing in New Jersey and everything. And I went out of my other business and I opened up a car dealership. And I wound up renting a lot in Lakewood, New Jersey, which has a big Orthodox Jewish community. And I made a lot of friends with a lot of Jewish guys. It's nice. But one Jewish guy stole my identity and was buying cars in it, which caused me a lot of problems because they sent investigators from Trenton, New Jersey, you know, like, because he wasn't paying. He was selling like $50,000 Escalades. He was buying them in New York and he was forging my name and flipping them. He registered as me as a dealer in Rahway, New Jersey, which is like 50 miles away. And so he was collecting the sales tax and forging my name. And, you know, he got a stamp and he was doing the whole thing. And then they caught him. And then, you know, I had to press charges on him. He ran to Israel. He posted bail. He ran to Israel. They have no extradition things to bring them back for fraud and forgery and everything and stealing sales tax money, like a couple of $100,000. He did it for like 6 months. And so then my ID before they caught him. And you know, and then I had to press charges on him, which made Jewish people mad at me. And then when he was in Israel for 2 years, he came back. I figured I'm not going to go after a Jewish person, you know, like I don't care. They arrested him, let them do what they do. That's their job, the prosecutor's office. 2 years later, he comes back. They dismissed the charges. Dude, if I stole somebody's identity and did that forgery and stole a couple $100,000 in sales tax and didn't claim, trying to put all that blame on me, on another person, I would have got 10 years in jail. Wait, that's not even the best. I had a big yard, and in the back behind my fence was a empty yard. So this other Jewish guy, young kid, Cardi, his name was, he says, hey, can I rent a space in the back there? So, you know, I signed like $500 a month. He was put like 30 cars, 40 cars back there. And so I let him put the cars back there. You know, I would pay no attention, but then he was paying me. Then he stopped paying me. So after about 6 months, you know, he's trying to get me out of. He wanted my lot. And it was I had a Jewish landlord. And a very nice man, actually. I have no complaints about him. And he says, you know, you got to get that guy's cars out of there. But I said, well, he's not paying me this and that. He says, I want you to junk all his cars. I said, dude, they're his cars. He said, I don't care, junk them. Because he can't do, I said, it's like your property, dude. You can. He's like, no. Because Jewish people can't do anything against another Jewish person. So I called up a junkyard company and I junked all his cars. But I left 2 there because I learned something while he was junking the cars there, because there are a lot of homeless people and stuff around that area at the time. And they told me that what he was doing was Jewish people who he had a mechanic shop. So Jewish people who brought their car to him to repair, if it was too expensive to repair, you know, he would make the car disappear for him. They would report it stolen, and guess where it wound up? In the back of my shop. In the back of my car lot, in the lot in the back behind the fence. 40 friggin' cars, 40. So I junked all, but I left 2 there that I knew for sure were stolen cars, that he reported stolen, that they reported stolen. And so then he came over screaming And that's bullshit. Jews don't drive on Saturday, and Orthodox Jews and don't talk on the phone. Yeah, he was on the phone and he was at my place, drove there on a Saturday. Give me my money for my car. It's like, dude, show me your titles and I'll give you the money. He had titles for about 3 or 4 of them. The rest were just, whatever. So next Monday he comes in. That was on the Saturday. Monday he comes in and he's screaming, give me my money. I said, dude, if you don't leave, I'm going to call the cops. He screamed, call the cops, call the cops, call the cops. Come in. Walked in the back, they separate. I'm walking in the back with the cop. I said, run the VIN on these 2 cars. Those are his cars. He's behind the fence here. These are his stuff. He was renting the spot. He wasn't paying me. I dumped all the cars. And I left these 2. Run the VINs. Next thing I know, there's 20 sheriff cars there. So now he's trying to say, oh, those are my cars. One of the guys that worked with me, he knew the detective there for like 30 years. He said, listen, what's his name? For how many years? 30 years? Do you think he's lying to you about this? He looked up in the air, the detective, ran outside, put handcuffs on him. Guess what? He went to court. Now, 25 cars they caught him with. It was like 40, but 25 they caught him junking that were reported stolen. It's running like a chop shop. So he's taking parts off of those cars. That's why he's keeping them and stuff. Then he's crushing them and junking them. So 25 cars. They gave him 3 months probation. 3 months probation. Listen. If I did 1 car, reported it stolen, and collected the insurance money, I would get 5 to 10 years in jail. I'm not lying, in New Jersey. So I don't understand how that happens. And I have good Jewish friends I care very much about. So I don't understand what's going on. And then I see these videos and I hear, I did have conversation with Orthodox Jewish people about how they took over Israel, which it wasn't really the right way. Well, he said, because God's supposed to bring them back, to Israel, not Rothschild or King of England or UN. And so, the answer to actually from my landlord, which was like 3 or 4, they used to hang out in my office, Jewish guys. He says, well, he didn't say we couldn't wait for him there. Well, yeah, but he didn't say you go there and take the land away from people that were living there. But okay, whatever. You know what? Israel's there and they're pretty civilized people, and fine. What's done is done is how I look at things, Going to say, well, kick all the Jews out of there. We're going to put them. No, but they should have just did how the Catholics did. They made the Vatican its own little country. Well, they could have made a headquarters in Israel of a Jewish little country where the head rabbis and whatever controlled the religion lived there. Then the rest of the people live free, like in Italy. And like in America, we have Washington, D.C., which is so corrupt now, which was the intention. And then the rest of the country, and they just take care of business. The government takes care of the government business. England has it in London with the financial. And the Catholic Church has the Vatican in Rome. This is a separate country, like its own little city-state, whatever you want to call that. They could have done that, but they didn't. So I don't understand. And then I see these things like the Jews want everybody dead. There's those 2 religions in the world that want everyone dead and that they control everything. That would be Islam and Judaism. And I'm thinking, why is that? Why do you think that God gave you a job to get rid of everybody else and you're going to be in charge? Where does it say that? I don't know. And how can you even prove you're Jewish or Islamic or Catholic? Here, I had my DNA done. I'm 87% Italian. I got like 3%, 2% of actually Arabic Jewish blood, the same that would be this by Israel. And, I have some other things all around in the world, whatever. So the only thing that proves a Jewish person is Jewish is in their head. They were born, they were told they were Jewish. Hey, I was born, my mother baptized me Catholic. Guess what? I'm Catholic. You're born Protestant, you're Protestant. You're born Islamic, you're Islamic. You know where that is? In your head. You don't know. There's no DNA. Their DNA is Eastern European. They're from Khazar, the Ashkenazi Jews. So I don't understand the whole thing. I don't understand the killing people. I don't understand the exploding cell phone thing or beeper or whatever. That means that they can blow up your car, your electric car. You know what? A lithium battery does not go out when it burns. When it catches on fire, when a lithium battery shorts out and explodes, because that's what happens when they short out or overcharged, they explode. And when they explode, you cannot put them out. You can use I use 2 fire extinguishers on a little charger jumper, like this big, like, I don't even say, like less than this big. I roll my own cigarettes. Little chargers you could buy them. They don't sell them anymore because they blow up. And I had one blow up in a car, and I tried to put 2 big fire extinguishers, could not get out, and knock it out through the bottom of the car, move the car away, and push it to the side so that it would burn till it was nothing but ashes. Where did they get this technology from? And how are they doing these things? And that puts everybody in jeopardy. And why does Israel so much want to take that land in Gaza? Because obviously killing the women and the children and is you want to take the land. And so how did those people get in through that fence for 4 hours, 5 hours before anyone came to their aid? And then the stories were exploded, which he mentioned in the beginning of this video that I showed you, that a lot of that stuff has been debunked. Although October 7th was horrible, but you locked people in the fence for 3 generations, didn't give them enough water, food, limited their electricity, made them travel on different roads. I mean, they had no rights. So I don't know. Eventually, you're going to get some people going to sneak out under the fence and be a little mad. I mean, I don't know. That would happen anywhere. It happens in American prisons. If you start treating people really bad, they revolt, right? So I don't know. I was just looking for answers. Well, they're saying Edom are the Christians. I have another video, Ghost of Nicole, I just put up on Rumble. So if you go to my Rumble channel, it's on YouTube too, under the lives. It's the one right before this. I'm going to end this video now because it's like 45 minutes. And it's late here. I got to get to bed. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I guess it's been giving me a lot of anxiety and stress because I don't want to be an anti-Semite. I love Jewish people, but I see something else controlling, something else wrong, something in their thinking of the Zionism that's incorrect, because all of that comes from the Talmud. And you can read some things in Talmud that are horrid things. You would not like what you read in the Talmud about what they say about Christians, which would be, exterminate all Christians, which they're taught in their Talmud. So the Jews today, that they use, what do they call it? They don't use Torah like Old Testament. They use in 3 interpretations of and Talmud. So there's there's 2, there's a Babylonian Talmud and an Assyrian Talmud. And they're modified, and they're written all the way up into the 13th century and stuff like that, 11th. And it's like, because how could you kill Talmuds, kill Christians in the Talmud? It had to be written after Christianity. And so all of us fighting over religion just drives me crazy. And something's going on in the world today that I really feel worried about. So God bless everyone. Remember to keep the peace of Jesus in you. And Jesus taught us to love one another as he has loved us, as Jesus has loved us. And that's the answer. And God bless everyone. And thank you guys so much for coming in. Really take care of yourself. God bless and have a great evening or day. And thank you. Take care. Stay blessed too. Yep. I appreciate it. Thank you, Third Fourth. I miss you. I haven't seen you in a while. Take care.